Good evening. Well, first of all, Phil Kwon, first and foremost, is a man of integrity. I've had the utmost privilege to witness that integrity firsthand, whether in his role as an assistant United States attorney, the first assistant attorney general of New Jersey, as a husband, a father, and a son. So to see what Phil went through today is not only disappointing for me personally, but frankly, a disappointment for the state, the process, and the judicial system. After years of public service to his state and to his country, Phil Kwon was treated not with respect today, but with disdain. He was treated not as a graduate of Georgetown University and as a former editor of the Rutgers Law Review, but as a political punching bag. He was treated not like an accomplished 11-year prosecutor who achieved convictions on public corruption and gang-related matters, but as a means to an end for Democrats desperately in search of a political win. Well, they exacted political revenge by using Phil Kwon. He wasn't treated as the first assistant attorney general, but he was treated as a way for members of the Democratic Party to regain political credibility with their base. So let's make no mistake about it. When you have more than 30 organizations, including the NJEA, the CWA, and the AFL-CIO, sending out letters starting last week and telling Democratic members of the legislature that this vote was more important than the pension and benefit vote, then you know that today's vote was no doubt a payback to the special interests and not in the best interests of the people of the state of New Jersey. But unfortunately, I can't tell you that I'm shocked by what we've seen throughout the day, because this process has been nothing more than a partisan sideshow since the very beginning. For the first time in the history of judicial nominees, you had the leaking of confidential documents by the Judiciary Committee to the press, disparaging a man's name blindly and anonymously, and passing judgment before even speaking with our nominees. There was another lack of consideration for not only Phil, but the import of this process and the respect that's demanded of the judiciary. It's not surprising that in a hearing that lasted 6 hours and 4 minutes, it took the Democrats 3 hours before there was the first question about Phil's qualifications, to then spend only 23 minutes on his qualifications in judicial philosophy. That's right, a total of 23 minutes in 6 hours and 4 minutes was spent on Phil Kwon's qualifications and his judicial philosophy. Instead, they conducted a shameful mockery of a hearing that dragged Phil and his family through the mud, questioned not only his integrity without any basis, but questioned the integrity of his wife, his mother, and his crippled father. This was a circus, not a judicial hearing. And it's shameful that an independent, well-qualified, and respected former assistant U.S. attorney was thrown away as collateral damage in a politically motivated, partisan spectacle that was decided before it even began. I was told this morning before the hearing even began that they were not approving Phil Kwon. So, the idea that they had open minds coming into the hearing is belied by the information that was given to me this morning. Phil deserved better, and I apologize to Phil for it. As governor of this state, I am responsible for much of what goes on here, and I apologize to Phil Kwon, to his wife Chris, and to his mother and father, who have not done anything except follow the law, live by the rules, pay their taxes, and in Phil's case, serve the public loyally for more than a decade. You know, I know Phil personally. This is not somebody who I found in the lawyer's diary or a resume that was sent into our office by an interested party. He's worked for me for the better part of 10 years. He's smart, he's dedicated, he's independent, and he's passionate about public service. Today's experience, I hope, will only embolden him to do more for the state, not less. And hopefully, after members of the Judiciary Committee have had the time to reflect on their own over-the-top behavior and gather the laurels from their special interest patrons for making a sacrifice on the altar of liberalism, they'll come back and they'll treat Bruce Harris with more respect than they were able to muster today for Phil Kwon. And because tomorrow's another day, and we always live in hope, I'm confident they'll be able to manage it now that they've been able to do what they felt like they needed to do. And I'll make one final note, as there was so much time spent on this today, on the issue of party affiliation. You know, for all the years that there were 4 Democrats, 2 Republicans, and Justice LaVecchia, the Democrats never called Janie LaVecchia a Republican. When they talked for all those years about the partisan balance of the court, they didn't say it was 4-3. They said it was 4-2-1. Only when the Republicans want to have a 4-person balance in their favor does Janie LaVecchia become a Republican. I am sure it is a shock to Justice LaVecchia, who has never voted in a political primary in her life, as far as we can tell, and has, through all of the voting records in the public that we've seen, always been an unaffiliated voter. I'm sure it is a shock to her that because she served in the Whitman administration, that she transformed into a Republican. I'm sure this is a cautionary tale for people like Jennifer Velez in my administration, who is an unaffiliated voter. The caution for her, if she were to be considered for a judicial position in the future, I guess, is that Jennifer Velez is now a Republican because she served in my administration. I wonder when she served Governor Corzine, whether she was then a Democrat because she served in his administration. I think it's incumbent upon the press to get to the bottom of this party affiliation situation, because Janie LaVecchia has always been an unaffiliated voter and was appointed to the court as an unaffiliated member of the court and was considered by the Democrats for all of her service until just recently to be the one of a 4-2-1 Democratic advantage on the court. Bruce Harris is a Republican. Phil Kwon is an independent. And the fact of the matter is that while Phil registered as a Republican in New York, he never once voted in a party primary, never once wrote a check to support a Republican candidate. So if Phil had been confirmed, and Bruce hopefully will be confirmed, it would have been a 3-2-2 split. Even if you conclude that you count Kwon as a Republican. The best it would be is 4-2-1, and I'm not conceding that he was, because he's not. 7 times prior, there's been 4-member Democratic majorities on the court, a number of those times with Janie LaVecchia counting as an independent. And so it seems to me that this is a result in search of a rationale, everybody. They don't want me to have the opportunity to appoint 4 real Republicans to the state Supreme Court. So they want to characterize Janie LaVecchia as a Republican to keep the ruling majority in the State House on the governor's side and the Republicans away from ever having 4 justices who are registered Republicans on the Supreme Court. That's something that nobody should really stand for. And it defies explanation. And I think when I was watching, and I watched the entire hearing today, and it seemed to me that they were attempting to convince themselves. They figured if they said it more and more and more and more, that somehow it would make it true. But it doesn't. And the only way to judge Janie LaVecchia are by her voting records and her party registration. And I think if you look at Justice LaVecchia's opinions on the court, it shows that Justice LaVecchia is an independent. Sometimes she sides with those who you would consider more conservative members of the court. More times than not, she sides with those folks who you would consider more liberal members of the court, including in the most recent Abbott decision. And so, and any of the number of Abbott decisions before that. So, you know, let's put aside the party affiliation issue. Unless the Democrats can really prove somehow, objectively, that Janie LaVecchia is a Republican.